I'm sure some of you guys have seen this Star Wars Darth Plagueis Episode 1 on YouTube. It came out about a week and a half ago, but I wanted to give it a shout out. It's done by Everest Productions, and it's based on the Darth Plagueis book, which, if you've read it, it's a really good book. I actually just finished the audiobook this week, and I'm about 45 minutes into this, and he seems to be sticking pretty much completely to the book. I don't know if he'll add stuff in later or what, but it's really cool that this group did this. I'm assuming it's more than one person. Well, obviously, it's more than one person for voice work and stuff, but I don't know about the recording and filming and all that, obviously. But they did it in movie duels, which I guess is maybe the same engine as Jedi Academy. That's how it sounds to me right here in the description of their video. And it's already got like 300,000 views in 10 days or whatever. But the main reason I wanted to talk about it is because one, the Darth Plagueis story from the EU was awesome. If you like books, I would definitely recommend reading it. Because the EU is massive, but it's a book that you can just read that book and you won't be lost at all. And it's one of those things that just reinforces how frustrating it is that Star Wars has been handled with so little care. I mean, if you look through the comments here that I'm just kind of scrolling through, you can see that every comment is overwhelmingly positive. People are taking shots at Disney. Like a lot of the comments are like, why can some fan do this in a video game that has 25-year-old graphics and it's better than the $200 million shows that we're getting or the $100 million shows that we're getting? And this is like a bunch of the comments. And you can see just every person is like, man, this is really embarrassing for Disney. And like, if you do watch this, which you probably should, it's only 2 hours, but it's part one. I'm guessing there'll probably be 3 parts just based on the book length, but obviously it would depend on how he breaks it up as well. But you can see like the graphics are not good. It kind of looks like maybe Halo 1 era. If you've played Jedi Academy, those graphics are obviously dated as well, or KOTOR, or any of that sort of thing. Like the lips don't even move when they talk. But it doesn't matter. The voice work is pretty good. The dialogue and stuff is straight from the book. And the plot so far is straight from the book. And you can tell a lot of work went into it. And the real reason I want to talk about this, other than to mention Plagueis and kind of recommend this video if people haven't seen it, because obviously this has way more views than my stuff gets, so there's a pretty good chance you've already seen it if you're here. I just think it's so frustrating that Star Wars has such a good fan base and Disney just perpetually shits on them. Like, Star Wars fans deserve better. It's unbelievable to me that some fan just does this on their own. He says in his description, if I can find it, as nonprofit, he can't make any money off of it. Yeah. Obviously, Star Wars is owned by Lucasfilm and they're not associated with them and blah, blah, blah. I mean, maybe he'll get like some more of these super thanks and these type of things, but he's probably not getting any ad money or anything like that, I would assume. And you can go all over the internet and see crazy lightsaber duels people put together. You can see people redoing stuff like the Kenobi show where they fix the Grand Inquisitor's head and, like the lighting and the editing and stuff. There's all kinds of fan projects. Star Wars Theory has his own thing that he's doing. A lot of this channel and what Star Wars Theory's channel used to be is like sort of fanfics. I mean, shit, I've actually written my own that I just need to do an edit for before I stick it online. But it's just so frustrating to me that Star Wars has had a fan base for, well, at this point, almost 50 years. And the people in charge can't be bothered to just respect it. Like, you have fans who do all this stuff on their own for free just purely because they love Star Wars and the material. And meanwhile, people like Leslie Headland, who can't even say what her favorite Star Wars movie is, are the ones in charge of shit. And not only are they in charge, they don't even give a fuck enough to try to maintain the universe or the canon or the story. Like, she wants this to be one of those stories where the Sith are morally gray and the Jedi are morally gray. And, there is a place for that in Star Wars, but overall, the Jedi are good, the Sith are bad. It's a very definitive thing, at least on a big scale. And I'm not going to get into the whole thing about, you know, mass murderers making all the girls in Star Wars wet and all that shit, because I don't understand fucking any of that and who it's for or the morality behind it, because there seems to be none. But it's just so frustrating. And the reality is, too, that for the normal Star Wars fan, if you were around for the OT, which I was not, it's very possible for you to think there hasn't been good Star Wars in over 40 years, but they're still around. Personally, I like the prequel trilogy. I wouldn't call them good movies. But then you had the 80s and 90s filled with Star Wars video games and the EU, which there's a lot of good content. The early 2000s had a ton of Star Wars video games. I'm playing the Old Republic right now again. And Kreia is a super interesting character in particular. I just finished another KOTOR playthrough. Like, there's no excuse for them to be as malicious and just disrespectful toward the fans as they are. And when I see stuff like this, where this guy put together a 2-hour animated fucking movie of a book, you can only ask yourself, why has this not been made into a live action show with $100 million behind it or whatever they need? Like, I understand people being upset that they threw the EU out. And to me, what Disney Star Wars should have done is either one of two things. One, well, they had a few options. One would be to say just straight out, like, look, there's way too much material in the EU. A lot of it's contradictory. We can't really keep track of all of it. So we're going to say it's not canon, but then we're going to adapt the stories that the fans like the most. This would be your Heir to the Empire. This would be Darth Plagueis, Darth Bane. I think Revan is pretty popular from what I've heard. There's a shitload of books. I'm not going to pretend like I know all of them. I've only read maybe 10 of them. So that would be one approach, is to say, like, look, it's not canon, but we like the lore and we're going to pull from it. And instead, we get this weird shit where they don't like it, and instead they pull from it, but only in the most surface level way. So they pulled Thrawn in and made him a fucking idiot because they're not talented enough to write a smart villain. They pulled Plagueis in to the Acolyte of all things and made him some weird Smeagol-like creature in a fucking cave who I guess is into voyeurism. And you see a lot of this type of thing. I'm sure people with more knowledge are even more pissed off than I am, because I've got like a little bit of knowledge, just enough to be dangerous. But so they've chosen the worst route. Another thing they could have done is just said, look, the EU is canon unless there's a live action thing that supersedes it. So like the Heir to the Empire would have been canon until the sequel trilogy came out. Now, obviously, that's a massive downgrade, but that would be one way to go about it. And that way they can kind of have their cake and eat it too. And this is sort of what George Lucas was doing anyway, because he couldn't keep track of all of it. So he was like, okay, the stuff that I make is canon, and then everything else is canon to a lesser degree, which is one way to do it when you're dealing with a massive universe. And then another option would have just been to have some lore expert or team of lore experts just go through and say, okay, like all of these stories can work together in the same universe, but these can't. And then, like these are the fan favorite things, and these are the things that the fans kind of hate anyway, on average. So we're going to get rid of the things that the fans don't like already, but we'll keep the stuff that they do like. They had a lot of options, and instead they chose to say, fuck you guys, it's not canon, and then we're just going to bastardize it and pull from it whenever we feel like. So they want to have their cake and eat it too, in like the weirdest fucking way, where they disrespect the lore and the fans. They don't understand it. They just kind of want to key jangle so that people on the internet will defend them from criticism. And that's sort of what's happening, probably to a lesser degree now. But, the Star Wars fan base to be as passionate as it is after almost 50 years, and at this point, it's more bad than good for the live action stuff. I mean, to me at least. Like, if you lump the prequel trilogy and original trilogy together as the good, obviously the sequel trilogy sucked. Solo was bad. Rogue One, I'm kind of neutral on. I've only seen it the one time in theater, and I suspect that movie gets a lot more benefit of the doubt just because of the Darth Vader scene. But then if you keep going with the live action stuff, I mean, Mandalorian season 3 seemed universally disliked. I didn't really like 1 or 2. I thought they were kind of boring and didn't really do much. And they were popular at the time. I don't know how well that's held up now. Boba Fett bombed, Kenobi bombed, Ahsoka bombed. Acolyte was terrible. If you want to add the animated stuff, the Clone Wars is super hit and miss. Rebels is overall, people were just kind of apathetic about it, even though I actually really enjoy it. So to have the fans, stick around for so long and to the point where they're willing to create their own things, they're willing to kind of forgive all the bad. If you ever go to a convention of any kind, without a doubt, you'll see all kinds of awesome Star Wars costumes. Like, I went to one with my wife, and we were Darth Bane and Darth Xana, and I had taken the time to make the costumes in Denver and bought the Sith eye contacts and all that. Like, it's just so frustrating to me that Star Wars has such a massive fan base and a really loyal fan base, considering what's been done to the universe. I mean, it's the equivalent of being like a Browns fan or a Lions fan after all these years, I think. And Disney just keeps insulting them and shitting all over them. And I just can't imagine that it's going to hold up much longer unless they change their attitude toward the fans. And really, the fans do deserve it with the amount of time and money and just emotions they've spent on the franchise. So this was kind of a rant. I'm not going to edit it. Fuck it. But you should go check out this video if you haven't seen it. If you're not a big fan of the video, go read the book or listen to the audiobook. It's a good story regardless. It really sets up Palpatine, and you get to hear the tragedy of Darth Plagueis the Wise. But yeah, oh God, there's a fuck up for you. If you do go watch this, let me know what you think. Or even if you just read the Darth Plagueis book, I do try to respond to all the comments that aren't just insults. And I really feel like the Star Wars fans just deserve better. And it's just frustrating to me. Like, it's been frustrating for a while. But every time I see something like this, it just reinforces how frustrating it is that the people in charge are just so spiteful and hateful and just neglecting the fan base. But yeah, I'll leave it there for this one. If you're still here, like and subscribe and all that shit, thanks. See ya.